thought I'd take a moment to discuss some of the reasons why we read great literature and why children should encounter these wonderful stories. That reason is the moral imagination. But as we begin, I'd like to start with a well-known proverb. It goes like this: train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Let's take a look at a couple of those words. Train. Train suggests to me the idea that it's a process. It's more than just telling a child to act in a particular way. Notice that it says train up. There's a direction to it. There's movement. It's moving upward. It's moving higher to something more noble. Also notice the word child. Children are still forming in their habits and their ideas and their understanding of the world. It's a great time to cultivate those kind of habits that are going to last them a lifetime. And so when they're old, they won't depart from it. But pay attention to the line also, the way they should go. Notice that it's the way, not a way. It's not just opening it up for children to go any which way they would like. Sure, children will have interests and ideas and things that captivate their attention, but there is a way to behave that they should follow, a way that they should go. This refers to goodness, virtue, being upright, being virtuous. This is how C.S. Lewis described this in his book, Mere Christianity. In the same way, a man who perseveres in doing just actions gets in the end a certain quality of character. Now it is that quality rather than the particular actions which we mean when we talk of virtue. Training up has to do with the cultivation of goodness, the cultivation of character, and in a way, the cultivation of humanity. All of us want children to be good, but how do you actually do it? How do we train up children to pursue what is good and what is right? Vigen Guroian, in his wonderful book, Tending the Heart of Virtue, said this: mere instruction in morality is not sufficient to nurture its virtues. Just telling children, do this and don't do that. In other words, we need to be explaining and identifying what is good and what is evil, but at the same time, that's not sufficient. We're going to need more. It might even backfire, especially when the presentation is heavily exhortative or heavy-handed and the pupil's will is coerced. In other words, you're not going to cultivate this kind of virtue in children through coercion or being heavy-handed. And then he offers an alternative. He says, instead, a compelling vision of the goodness of goodness itself needs to be presented in a way that is attractive and stirs the imagination. What he's saying here is that a complete good moral education addresses both the head and the heart. And it does this by captivating and stirring the imagination of children. He goes on, the great fairy tales and the fantasy stories capture the meaning of morality through vivid depictions of the struggle between good and evil, where characters must make choices between right and wrong, and heroes and villains contest for the very fate of imaginary world. They avoid didacticism. What he means there is preachy, being overly preachy, and supply the imagination with important symbolic information about the shape of the world and appropriate responses to its inhabitants. Is the way that children should go. William Kirkpatrick says it this way: imagination is one of the keys to virtue. It is not enough to know what's right. It's also necessary to desire to do right. In theory, reason should guide our moral choices. Too often our reason obediently submits to what our imagination has already decided. Children, he said, should be brought up in a way that they will fall in love with virtue and hate vice. So how do children fall in love with virtue and make them children want to emulate these? They see these heroes acting in a particular way, and they want to emulate those heroes themselves. The images or the memories of these characters and their actions, the choices that they make, are what Russell Kirk called the moral imagination. A friend of mine told me that the difference between the imagination and the moral imagination is the imagination tells us what could be, but the moral imagination tells us what should be. There's a moral component to it.